we're here to get your content on television. On Channel 22, we bring you live and replay coverage of government meetings and other town updates. A third channel, Blue Hawk Media, is operated by SAU 16 and can be found on Channel 13, with all your school sports, events, and meetings. You can watch Exeter TV online at exeternh.tv, Apple TV, and on Roku. Find us on social media for extra content. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell to get notified about live streams and new content. Tune in to our platforms every other Friday to watch the Exeter Biweekly Report, with recaps of recent events, updates from town departments, and messages from nonprofits in your area. If you head to our website, exeternh.tv, we invite you to sign up to our newsletter to receive monthly updates about new content, upcoming meetings, and more. We'd like to thank you for taking the time to watch Exeter TV and hope that you tune in to our other content as well.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the September 26, 2022 Town of Exeter Select Board meeting. I will introduce the board in a few minutes, but first we're going to go down to the wheelwright room for an interview the board has with a candidate for the trustees of the trust fund. So we'll take a quick recess to go downstairs briefly, and then we'll be back up. I'll introduce the board, and we will proceed with our meeting. Thank you. Okay, welcome back, and good evening again. Good evening, Exeter. Good evening to my colleagues on the board, respective town staff, those in attendance this evening, and those watching at home. And welcome to the September 26, 2022 Town of Exeter Select Board meeting. I'd like to start by introducing the board. Selectwoman Roundtree Olaf will be with us in just a moment. To my right, we have Selectwoman Roundtree Olaf. Good evening. To my right, we have the Vice Chair, Selectwoman Molly Cowan. Good evening.
Hi, everybody.
To my left, we have our clerk, Selectwoman Julie Gilman. Good evening.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome.
Next to Julie, we have Selectwoman Nancy Belanger. Good evening.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome.
Our Town Manager, Mr. Rustine.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you.
Also in attendance, we have our Assistant Town Manager, Melissa Roy, and our Recording Secretary, Joanna Bartel. Good evening. My name is Nico Papakostandis. Before we begin, I'd like to say hello and introduce members of the audience this evening. We have a class from PEA, Bill Jordan's class, American Politics and Public Policy, which I understand is a senior elective class, and the class is here this evening to, I guess, watch what we do. So, Mr. Jordan, did you want to do you have a few words, or do you?
Sure. A microphone?
Please.
So this is a class where we learn about the government, media, various levels of government, and I always make it a point to bring the kids here if I can when it's not COVID. And I feel like a lot of what we study is kind of depressing, but this is sort of the most uplifting part because it seems like what happens here is actually getting things done and being quite civil to each other. So I appreciate that. And the kids always love it. One year, some kids just kept coming back. I don't know if some
I
of you
remember.
that.
It
Yeah.
was so wonderful.
Yeah.
We are here almost every Monday night, if anybody wants to come.
Yeah.
There's always seats.
There's always...
Well, not tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jordan. And welcome again. And again, we're here almost every other Monday, and you're always welcome to attend. Next on the agenda, we have the Squamscott River Sewer Siphon Upgrade Construction Phase Services. I believe this is the bid award. Mr. Dean, did you want to speak to this briefly?
Yes, this is a construction administration part of the contract, and so we will move ahead once this is approved.
Okay, are there any questions of Mr. Dean? We have a memo in our packet. Seeing no questions or comments, I would entertain a motion to enter into an agreement with Wright Pierce for construction phase engineering services for the Squamscott River Sewer Siphon Upgrade in the amount of $274,000.
So moved.
Second.
It's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Now we have public comment. This is an opportunity for members of the public to come up and have comment with the Select Board. We do ask if your comment is relative to an agenda item that you wait for that item to come up. And with that, I'll pause for a moment. Okay, and seeing no public comment, we'll move on. We do not have any proclamations or recognitions this evening. So next item on the agenda is the approval of our minutes from our regular Select Board meeting of September 19th, 2022. I would ask the board if there are any revisions or amendments to the minutes. Okay, seeing none, I would entertain a motion to approve the Exeter Select Board regular meeting minutes of September 19th, 2022.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. And we have several appointments this evening, the first of which, Mr. Dean, was the Budget Recommendations Committee, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Oh, Chris. Oh, my goodness.
He's in the meeting minutes. Hold on.
Yeah, it's in
Chris
meeting
Newport.
minutes.
Mr. Newport, Chris Newport.
Newport.
So we interviewed Chris Newport at our last meeting. The Budget Recommendations Committee is due to meet for their first meeting on Wednesday. So I would entertain a motion to appoint Chris
Newport.
To the Budget Recommendations Committee for the 2022 year. Of course, there's no term.
So moved.
So motion
I'll
and
second.
a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Chris, and we welcome you to the committee this year. The next interviewee last week was for the Arts and Culture Commission. We interviewed Florence Ruffner. There's an opening as a regular member. There's also an opening for an alternate member, both terms expiring in 2025.
Is Bruce Jones an alternate?
Bruce Jones is an alternate.
Does he want to be a member?
He hasn't come forward to say he did.
Should we appoint her and then they can work it out?
Yes.
As an alternate.
No, appoint her as a member.
And then I can,
There's been a vacancy for,
Well, usually we
Months.
have the alternate.
I've asked them. And
Oh, I thought you just said he hasn't said, so.
he hasn't like said actively that he wants to take on the vacancy. And it's been a few months that the vacancy has existed.
And no one's followed up with him.
They've had meetings since.
we usually ask for that committee, for committees to recommend somebody to move into the,
So you're saying to appoint her as an alternate and let them to decide?
no, appoint her as a full member.
Appoint her as a full member.
How many full?
There was one vacancy and plus alternate vacancies.
Okay. So my only point is, and I'm fine, if that's the way you guys want to go, my point is, we only have one full-time vacancy and 2 alternate. So if we appoint her as the full-time, they can't do the normal process that we do. Of
Well,
Bruce.
this is, well, they can if Florence wants to move down to, if
Okay,
Bruce
never
wants
mind.
to move up, then
Okay,
they can have
never
that
mind.
discussion. As well.
I'm going to
Yes.
move that, yeah, it's still not the normal thing, but it's fine.
Yeah.
Florence Ruffner as a full-time, as a full voting member for the Arts and Culture Commission.
Second.
Before we vote, we need to put in the term expires April 2025.
Oh, sorry, thank you. What was that, April
April
20?
25,
20,
2025.
okay, thank you.
Did you get that, Joanna? Okay. There's a motion.
Joanne.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. And we thank Mrs. Ruffner for volunteering. And last, this evening, we have an opening on the trustees of the trust fund. This is a little bit different. The trustees of the trust fund is made up of 3 individuals, and it's an elected office. And this past March, during the town election, Corey Stevens ran for trustees of the trust fund and won. Shortly thereafter, he applied and was hired to become our finance director. Thus, he had to resign his spot on the trustees of the trust fund. The select board then has the authority to appoint somebody to serve the term, in this case of Mr. Stevens, which would expire in April 2025. Excuse me. This evening, the board interviewed Mr. Jared Pat Curtis, who's expressed an interest in serving out the vacant term. And I think collectively the board felt that his qualifications absolutely meet what we need for the trustees. The trustees do need to have a meeting very soon, and I think there's interest in meeting either this week or next week. And the trustees of the trust fund have indicated they'd like to come before the board to give a report sometime in the near future, which I don't believe we've had in quite some time. So I'm excited to have the potential of having a full trustees of the trust fund. And I would entertain a motion at this point then to appoint Jared Pat Curtis to the open trustees of the trust fund spot with a term expiring April 2025.
March,
That's right, the election, March 2025.
so moved.
Second.
It's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Pat.
You're welcome.
And Joanne, you got the term was March? Thanks. Okay. Before we get into discussion items, I just had one comment. At our last meeting, we heard from the town moderator, the town clerk, and the checklist, supervisor of the checklist. And we talked about polling pads and the need to purchase these polling pads to not only make voting more efficient for our residents, but also to make voting a little more expeditious and easier for the volunteers. We had a presentation from the town moderator and the town clerk, and it appeared as if unanimously the board was interested in moving forward. The recommendation was to purchase these pads for the March 2023 election. The reason being is that typically the town election has fewer numbers than presidential elections or federal and state elections, and it would give both staff and our residents time to learn how these polling pads work. The reason we didn't take it up for a vote last week is because of the funding and how the town would go about purchasing these pads. Excuse me, the town clerk indicated that the inventory was not going to be a problem, that the pads could be purchased within a couple of weeks, they'd be delivered. However, I don't think the board felt we wanted to wait till the last minute because I'm sure other communities are going to start to look at these as well. The cost of the 10 polling pads was $19,400. The town manager had made the recommendation to use ARPA funds. The board has laid out basically our plan as to how we'd like to use ARPA funds. Though purchasing the poll pads would be a one-time purchase, there will be maintenance throughout the following years, and thus it would become a line item. And consistent with what we've done with other department heads, we felt that maybe we should try to find money in the budget. If not all the $19,000, then at least some of the $19,000. So we charged the town manager with going back to the 2022 budget to see what funds are available. As we know, the town manager was away at an ICMA conference last week and did not come back to work until Thursday. It basically only gave him a day and a half to really scrub through the budget. So I asked the town manager not to put it on the agenda tonight, but to revisit it on October 11th to allow he and the assistant town manager some extra time to try to find money in the budget and then make a recommendation as to how we pay for that. So I just wanted the board to understand why it's not on, but it will be taken up October 11th.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Our first discussion item this evening, we have our town planner, Dave Sharples, with a solar array update, and I know we're all anxious to hear this, Dave. The memo and timeline, the memo and timeline were frustrating this weekend as I read through, but.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. First, welcome, class, teachers. Good to see everyone here. Local government, it's really where the rubber meets the road. We do get stuff done here, so I love local government.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Absolutely.
Anyway, getting to the reason why I was here tonight. I'm excited to be here to give you a status on the solar array, since it's been, 18 months since the voters approved a $3.62 million, thereabouts, warrant article to construct up to a 1.77 megawatt solar array on the closed landfill off of Crossroad, the town of Exeter. So it's been a while, so I'm gonna go a little more detail than I usually do, provide a little history, give you a timeline, and then I'll talk about potential next steps. So actually when it was started, when I first started here in 2016, I started exploring the possibility of putting a solar array on the landfill. At that time, I engaged, discussions with several developers, but the New Hampshire state law was not very amenable to, large solar arrays with municipalities. They had a 1 megawatt cap on net metering, and that wasn't, really something that we made sense to move forward. There were several bills, started and stopped, and then in 2019, the legislature did pass a bill that allowed net metering up to 5 megawatts. So it allowed us to, move forward with exploring. So I got right on it. I started looking at the new bill, and then we issued a request for proposals in October of 2020, and we received a couple of responses. One of the responses was from Revision Energy, and I do have Dan Weeks here representing Revision Energy. After I'm done, he'll like to have a few words, and then we'll be available for questions. But then what was interesting about the revision proposal is when I wrote the RFP, I asked for a land lease which a lot of these are set up that way, like leasing land. A private developer comes in and just pays a set monthly rent or land lease to the town, and then they get the profits of anything, and then they also take the investment risk, et cetera, on the array. But we don't, we don't own the system. We're just basically a landlord renting the land to put the system up. But Revision also included in their proposal the option for the town to be the investor, to be the purchaser and the owner of the system, and provided us with cash flow projections and summary data on the project that it was really attractive, an attractive alternative to land leasing, which resulted in a lot more revenue for the town over the life of the project. So staff, myself, Energy Committee, Sustainability Advisory Committee, and the Select Board, we all vetted these kind of two options of a land lease and or a purchase, and decided to move forward, and ultimately chose to place a warrant article on the 2021 warrant for the $3.62 million to construct up to the 1.77 megawatt solar array. So that was and with the ownership which would remain in the town. So at that time, right after it passed, we hadn't done what is called an interconnection study, because you have to, it's a requirement when you build a solar array, you have to do an interconnection study with the utility company, and here is Unitil. Unitil is in Exeter. So, and there's no sense in spending, because it's quite of an expense to do this study before you knew if the project was going to move forward. So once the vote passed, I worked with Revision in mid-March to about July, and we worked with Revision to get a mutually agreeable letter of intent to move forward with the solar array project. And part of that letter of intent was Revision Energy was going to fund the interconnection study and make application to Unitil for that interconnection study on behalf of the town. And then, so in July 2nd, in 2021, we entered into a letter of intent with Revision Energy. And from July to about September, Revision prepared the impact study application. And then late September of 2021, I signed the impact study application on behalf of the town. And fast forward a couple times, it was about November 17th, 2021, a little less than a year ago, or that the Unitil determined that they had received a completed application, paid for the study, and said, okay, the study has begun. And it was in our agreement that we signed with Unitil, there was a 55-day turnaround on the study. So 55 days came and went, and mid-January I didn't hear anything. I emailed Unitil. Apparently there was some sort of hold on the application for about 5 or 6 weeks. And I quickly worked with it, was unaware, and I quickly worked with Revision Energy, and we solved it and got the study up and running again. And they said it was going to be about February, March, the study was going to be done. February, March came and went. About mid-April, I received an email from Unitil with just an estimated cost for the interconnection requirements, and it was $641,000, which we had originally budgeted in $3.62 million. We originally carried $100,000, Dan? It was $125,000. So basically, well over what we had, basically making the numbers for the project not work. So I thought that day that might have been the end of this solar array project, but we were diligent. We're going, okay, let's keep trying. Let's get the impact study results, see what they say, because all they provided us with an estimate of these improvements that were needed. So we wanted to, get the impact study, look at it, review it, figure it out. What did we get? I think when did we get it? Oh yeah, June 9th, about 8 months later, from the time of submission, we did June 9th, this just a few months ago, we received the impact study. We reviewed it, and we tried to set up a couple calls with Unitil, were unsuccessful. Finally, we were able to speak to them about a month ago, got on a call and discussed the requirements, because there was a requirement for a direct transfer trip that constituted about 40% of it. It was like $243,000 expense. without getting into the details of what that is, it was something that Unitil was requiring in order for us to construct a solar array and connect into their system, into their distribution network. So we tried to question that, tried to get it. We are still working on that. There are some other options but right now Unitil is, as long as the current scheme and they tie into us, they want a direct transfer trip. There are other options. I'm not going to get into them. Just suffice to say, we're going to continue to work on that to try to get that either eliminated or reduced by going, and maybe Dan, if anyone has any questions, he can be a little more specific on that. But everything, the analysis that we're going to discuss in a few minutes about the financials, all assume the direct transfer trip is going to be a cost. So I don't, if we can remove it and reduce it, it'll just be a benefit on these numbers that we're going to discuss in a little bit. So then on August 16th, the U.S. President signed the Inflation Reduction Act, which really changed the whole situation, because what that part of that bill did was it provided an electricity investment credit of 30% on qualifying solar array projects. And we are one of those projects. We can meet those qualifications. There's a couple, but we can meet them. We will meet them. One of them is, fair wages, like from the Davis-Bacon and apprenticeship program, but been in discussions with Revision. They can meet those requirements with the numbers that they're telling us, that they can construct the solar array. So that was kind of brought it all back to life. and unlike past credits, it was a tax credit, and we're not a tax-paying entity. We do pay payroll taxes, but so they wrote into the bill what's called the direct pay. So they actually will directly pay, my understanding is cut the town a check. Once the system's up and running, the system has to be online, and then you show how much you made, and you get 30% of that. There's some eligible costs and ineligible costs, but the majority of it, I think the permitting is ineligible, like the cost for permitting and so forth, like permit fees and so forth. But the construction of the solar array and the interconnection requirements, which is a big one, the $641,000, those are eligible for the 30% tax credit. So it was a really, it was a game changer. So I asked Revision to prepare a cash flow summary for what it would be for a 1.77 megawatt system, which is basically the maximum that we would put out there, and what those costs would be. And you have them in the you have two of these, and I did pass some out. I'll explain. There's a little bit of a difference. Notice something. So in the packets, but I can explain that difference in a minute. It's not that major, but the two I gave you.
David, the one that was in the packet, I've recycled. I don't need that anymore, right?
You don't need that anymore.
Okay,
and I'll explain the minor difference, as we go along. But I just want to look. So the first one you're going to see, it's if you look at the town, it says Town of Exeter Solar Farm. Solar Design Summary is the first one. It says 1768.8 kilowatts. You got that one? Okay, that's the 1.77 megawatt system. And if you flip to the cash flow summary here, as you can see, the total project costs is $5,070,619, which far exceeds the 3.6.
Can you repeat that, because you didn't bring the magnifying glass with you?
It's also on the summary sheet. $5,070,619.
Thank you.
That's the all-in cost, turnkey price. Includes an allowance for the $641,000 for the Unitil, connection, and the turnkey price of labor, installation materials from Revision Energy. So that exceeded our authority, because we were only approved for I'll use 3.62 million. It's 3,617,000, but I'll use just 3.62 for the sake of this discussion. So that fell short of about $1.4 million, $1,450,000, fall short. However, if you take that price and you we're going to get back the 30% investment credit, that actually brings the cost just below $3.62 million. And it's actually, we could afford that at the end of the project with the amount the voters approve. However, we're a town, we don't have the authority to go out and bond for the $5,070,000 because we don't have that authority to raise and appropriate. So I asked Revision, I said, well, there's a couple options. What can you build? Because the warrant in 2021, I wrote it, and I wrote it to up to 1.77, because I knew prices would change. I knew, situations change. And so there was a possibility that we might have to reduce the size of the system to get it within budget. So I said, what can you provide? And they provided us the second summary sheet that is a 1.3 megawatt system. And that cost is covered, $3,614,629. It still carries the $641,000 of interconnection, which the interconnection requirements may drop with the lower system, but we're still carrying that price. And that is so I wanted to make sure, see if these are cash positive projects and what the cash flow projections are. So, because we had presented to the voters back when we presented the warrant article, this was going to be cash flow positive from year one. It wasn't going to have any impact on the tax rate or the voters. I mean on the taxpayers and residents. So actually, we'd create enough revenue each year from year one to pay off any debt service and operation and maintenance of the system. And as we can get as deep into these as you want, but it's suffice to say that both of these systems do meet that criteria. They are cash positive from year one. What I put in the packet was when Revision did this, I noticed, because I got these Friday, these like hot off the press, I got these Friday, I wrote the memo and I sent them to you, and I really didn't have time to absorb them. And in my review of them, I realized that what Revision did was they assumed when we get the tax credit, which we would get in year one. So we get a tax credit in year one. So if it's a 1.3 megawatt system, we'd get $1,084,000 and change. If it was the larger system, we'd get about $1.5 million. And they assumed we would take that credit and immediately pay it into the principal of the loan. To pay down the loan amount, and then that would reduce our annual bond payments from year 2 to year 20. However, while the private sector and private banking works that way, it doesn't work with the municipal bond bank. So we cannot, when we go to the municipal bond bank, it's a structured payment. You can't prepay. There's no prepayment. So he adjusted that, and basically the line switched. The whole project cost over the length, the other way would have saved us about $300,000 in interest, but it still doesn't, change the basis of the numbers. So either system, so I'll go the 1.3 megawatt system, it is cash positive from year one. Year one, we get almost 1.1 million with the tax credit. Following years, 13,000, then 14, 15, 17, and it accumulates. There is a loss in year 11 of $2,000, but you look at the loan cumulative cash flow at that year, we're going to have about 1.272 million accumulated cash flow, so we'll be able to cover that $2,000 shortfall in that year easily. And what I was talking to the finance director about this, and I believe Revision can confirm this loan cumulative cash flow doesn't assume we invest this money. It just assumes we basically just sit on it and we don't get any interest from it. So we'd actually get, with that $1 million credit, we get 0.8% a year off of that. So these loan cumulative cash flow numbers would actually be a little bit higher if we put that investment revenue that we'd get from those funds. So that's cash flow at year 20, which 25 is the warranty, right, Dan? Yeah, the warranty is 25 years. So at 25 years, it's $2,968,050 cash positive to the town. at the end of the warranty period. So it's about $3 million of positive revenue for the town at the end of the warranty period. And that includes replacing the inverter at year 20, which is a pretty big expense, about an $80,000 expense, but that can still be covered and we won't show a loss even in that year. So very positive, $3 million. If you look at the 1.77 megawatt and you go at the year 25 and go across, it's $3,845,124. So it's about $1 million better revenue for the town over the warranty period. So pretty significant. I mean, still $3 million, positive. But we can't do this without voter approval, the 1.77 megawatt. We can do the 1.3 megawatt system with the funds we have, but in the end, it will end up being the 1.3 megawatt system will end up costing us $2.5 million, $1.1 million less than the voters approved because of the tax credit. Mm-hmm. So I thought that I'd come to you tonight, and I'm not asking you to, for any votes or authorize anything. I wanted to kind of give you the whole lay of the land, the history of it, how we got to where we got to, and what I was thinking to see, what your thoughts were. So I would like to review and negotiate a contract with Revision Energy for the 1.3 megawatt system. And at the same time, I would like possibly exploring a warrant article to go before the voters in March to authorize the town to increase our bonding authority by $1,484,041 to the total of the $5,070,000. And if such a warrant article makes it onto the ballot and is approved, it would allow us to construct the 1.77 megawatt system. But the tax credit we would receive is $1,484,041. So I'd request an additional $1,452,000. We'd get a credit of $1,484,000, so we'd actually get $31,000 more than what we asked the voters. So although the voters would have to approve it, we'd actually get that money plus another $31,000 in a tax credit. Mm-hmm. So it would be a wash. But there are certain risks associated with that, because built into these assumptions, and we vetted this before, and when we did, there are, the major assumptions are utility costs are going to go up 2.5% annually. And that's based on a 30-year trend. We vetted that. But nobody can predict the future. Also REC pricing, the renewable energy credits are estimated right now in this cash flow summary at $35 a REC. I think you told me this morning they're selling about 40 down in the Massachusetts market, and we are able to access that market. My understanding from this system in New Hampshire, we can access the Massachusetts because it's not really a robust market in New Hampshire. But at the same time, this IRA might have the Inflation Reduction Act. That's what I just make sure everyone remembers that acronym. That could affect REC prices. I've heard that, but we don't know. So those are assumptions. So the less risk approach is the smaller system, because it's going to end up costing us $1 million less. And even if the RECs were valued at nothing, the RECs that we predicted are $463,000 in the 1.3 system. We could absorb that in the credit alone, and it would still be cash positive, and we'd still be, so that kind of takes that REC assumption away. When you go to the bigger system, those numbers get a little tighter, but yet there's more upside on the long-term revenue. Mm-hmm. So with that, before I have Dan, is there any other questions? Oh, wait a minute. Well, sorry. So I'd like to do that, and then if I can get to that point, one more thing. To review and negotiate the contract, I'm not too familiar with this stuff. It kind of makes my eyes glaze, brain hurt a little bit when you talk about solar and energy and DTTs and all that. So I did ask Jennifer Perry was generous enough to allow some funding out of one of her accounts to hire a third-party review to review and negotiate and do their own financial analysis on this on behalf of the town. And Revision's been great. They're a partner, but our interests aren't completely aligned because, they are, a for-profit company doing, and we're getting a contract, so I feel better about getting a third party, been upfront with them about it. And over the next couple of weeks, I would do that. And if it came back and we thought we could move forward with this, I would be back at a later date with a recommendation to enter into contract. Okay. So, do you have any questions of me before I give it to Dan?
Well, yeah, let's pause for a moment. First of all, thank you for doing that. I mean, I appreciate it. And Director Perry, thank you for allowing us to dip into your funds for that, because I think it's important. Any comments, questions, or thoughts for Mr. Sharples before we hear from?
I have one. Can you explain what net metering is for the people sitting in the room?
Yeah, the gist of it. I know the gist of it, because like I just said, breaks my brain hurt. But in order to net meter, when you have a project that generates X amount of electricity, right? So say like 1,000 kilowatts, just for the sake of easy math, then you have to assign accounts and say, okay, these are the accounts I'm going to credit the credit that I'm going to get for the utility, the electricity I generate. Mm-hmm. And you have to have enough users to exceed that. You have to have you have to use 1,000 kilowatts or more to get that full credit to net meter. So we're going to, in our town, that's going to offset about 92% of our cost. If we didn't, we'd have to get more of a group. We'd maybe go out to, users, Riverwoods, or somebody willing to, enter into the net metering. So it's basically, you have to use what you generate, and then you get a credit on your bill. So basically what's going to happen is, DPW pays, you add up the accounts, we estimate what the production's going to be and what the credit's going to be and then we assign all these accounts. So those bills are going to come in that used to be $90,000 are going to be zero, and possibly with a credit to them. And then if there is a credit, it carries over, and once a year you can ask Unitil for a check. They will cut you a check once a year, because sometimes in the summer you don't use as much, and in the winter you use more. So you hopefully you net meter and you assign accounts that it's kind of a wash. But if there is a credit, once a year you can get cut a check. Would you like to add anything to net metering to that, or?
Yes.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's absolutely correct.
Do you want to speak in the mic?
I think it's a critical part of the discussion, though, that gets lost because it makes it make sense and makes why we're spending this money.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dan Weeks, Vice President and co-owner at Revision Energy up the road in Brentwood, and it's an honor to be here tonight. I'll briefly answer that question, then I can speak a little bit more broadly to fill out the picture. Net metering is the mechanism in New Hampshire and a lot of other states around the country by which customers can be generators of power. We speak of the distributed energy resources instead of the top-down grid of the past, where you have large power plants sending power one direction through the poles and wires to a lot of distributed users of power. We now have distributed generation, sort of democratization of power generation. And net metering is a critical mechanism where for smaller systems, this one is classified as a large generator, but for small generators, you don't actually need to account for the power generated and assign that to other accounts. So projects up to 100 kilowatts, which is the equivalent of a smaller elementary school roof or about half an acre of land, those projects can sell their power through net metering directly to the grid and receive payments at a bit less than the retail rate of electricity, so less than you would buy that power for, but enough value there that there's an incentive for citizens, businesses, towns, nonprofits to generate power and deliver it to the grid and benefit all ratepayers in the process. Large customer generators, as Mr. Sharples said, do need to account for all the power that's generated by assigning other accounts within the same utility service territory. That can be home accounts. Obviously, you'd start with other town accounts. It could be other commercial accounts, nonprofit accounts. And so long as the usage on those accounts is equal to or greater than the total generated power, you can then get credits appearing directly on the bills of those other accounts. Thank you.
Wait, I have one question that's probably going to make your head explode some more. We just submitted our plan for community aggregation.
Yeah.
How does net metering get wrapped up in that?
Great question. The Community Power Program, as it's called in New Hampshire, or a version of community power aggregation, we've seen in Massachusetts and California and a number of other states. It's an exciting initiative. The short answer is it's on a separate track. So over the next few years, we will see communities, and Exeter may well be one, which would be very exciting, that will essentially step in and provide a function that until now the utilities have provided, which is to source power from a variety of generators. They can be traditional fossil fuel burning or up the highway Seabrook nuclear power plants. They can be new clean energy generation of all sorts, different types of renewables. Wind will be coming online from offshore, for example. And they can create an energy mix that aligns with their goals as a town and which provides a lower cost power as the alternative default power. Today, any ratepayer who doesn't go out and shop for a power supplier of their own is automatically receiving default power from the utilities. Historically, and still today, most of the power, the source of that power is from traditional fossil fuel generation, but we know that renewables are actually less expensive in terms of the long-term levelized cost of energy, and so we're seeing a lot of towns beginning to construct their own portfolios to replace the default power of the utility with a mix of resources, including more local renewables. So over the next few years, a solar array like the one we're discussing tonight could participate, could be a member of this portfolio through a separately negotiated contract that would fall outside of the purview of net metering. But as it stands today, net metering is a very favorable option for towns because it guarantees a level of energy revenue. It's pegged to the utility-wide default rates that provides a strong financial return and savings to taxpayers.
Yeah, I think we put our application in last week.
We did.
For our community aggregation plan.
And also, I did email Cliff Sinnott and Lou Hitzroth that same question there on our energy committee, and have been spearheading, as you know, the community power aggregation effort. And they have asked that question too, and they told me that they don't believe it has any effect, but that is a critical, and we're going to continue to follow that to make sure that's the case. But we don't, all we're being told is just what Dan said and so forth, that two separate tracks, it does not have any effect.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No?
I'm fine.
Down here?
Yeah.
No?
I would be happy to just add some brief comments, again, filling out the larger picture, and certainly if there are additional questions, very happy to answer them.
Great.
Again, really appreciate the opportunity to be here and want to express my thanks to the town of Exeter for being a leader in the state in accelerating the clean energy transition. If and when, I trust when this solar array is installed, under today's terms, it would be the second largest municipal array in the state of New Hampshire. We do see other communities beginning to tackle larger projects, but this would be a very significant contribution, adding about 1.5% to New Hampshire's total solar energy generation, which shows that there is a lot of future opportunity, and also just how significant town projects like this are. To just magnify a few of the, I think, really important points that Dave laid out, and speaking on behalf of my co-owners and our team, we have really appreciated working with Dave and the team here at the town of Exeter through a more complex than usual process. It doesn't usually take 8 months plus to get a system impact study from the utility. At the time that we made the initial estimates of $125,000 in system upgrade costs, that was the most we had seen from the utility based on the existing methodology. That was a safe assumption, but a lot is changing rapidly in the interconnection space. And so working through this entire process has not been easy, but we really appreciate the partnership with the town. We do believe that the signing of the Inflation Reduction Act is a game changer, and that there is an opportunity to provide the residents of Exeter significantly better financial value as well as environmental impact than was initially contemplated because of the signing of that, as well as the very pronounced trend in increased electric rates. Revision is eager to be as creative as we can to ensure that the Select Board and the Town of Exeter can pursue the project that you feel makes the most sense. We think the logical approach is to proceed to contract, which allows the project to continue on the development cycle. We've gone through about a year with the utility. We are continuing to probe the results of that and have brought in some outside utility expertise of our own to frankly challenge the findings from that system impact study, which are out of step with the dozens of other impact studies we have completed with this and other utilities. We believe that the actual cost to safely interconnect is well below the $641,000 figure, but ultimately the utilities make that determination and cannot be refuted. However, they engage with us in a good faith process of assessing the rationale and delving into the technical aspects to probe if there are alternative solutions that will, of course, protect the grid at the same time as allowing the system to interconnect. So while we continue that, the other main set of development activities, which we propose to continue as soon as possible, is on the civil and environmental engineering and permitting side of the equation, particularly when we're installing on capped landfills. These are appropriately subject to significant oversight and permitting requirements with New Hampshire's Department of Environmental Services. That process is a minimum 6 to 8 months to go through the environmental engineering and obtain the permits. And so what would be made possible if the Select Board determines to continue this process is that between now and town meeting, we could obtain or get substantially down the road toward obtaining those necessary permits, finalizing exactly the scope in terms of the type of installation and erosion controls and other environmental measures on site, and be able to actually commence construction and quite possibly achieve mechanical completion where the system is completed pending final utility upgrades. The timeline of those is always a bit unpredictable and tends to stretch, but we could substantially build the system in the course of next year. Going to contract on either the smaller or larger system would be the surest way to enable that development work, especially on the environmental and civil engineering side, to continue. If that was not an option, we're of course glad to explore different sort of interim solutions, a continuation of the letter of intent, for example. And one other option that we had explored a little bit previously, and I had the chance to check back in with members of my team just this afternoon on, is if the Select Board was committed to installing the larger system size, but knows that the funding, the 30% federal rebate through the investment tax credit, would not come until the end of the process. There is the possibility to explore what is not uncommon in the private sector, which is construction financing, a temporary loan to cover the difference, which could allow the town to move forward with the full system if that was preferred. I think the proposal, as Dave said, is not to ask the Select Board tonight to make a decision, but to continue working on these options. That latter one was one that we had discussed a little bit, and I just explored again late this afternoon.
I was like, another option.
So not proposing that I think there's a bit more exploration to do, and I think the town bringing in another consultant experienced with contracting and financial analysis is always a good idea. We're eager to work with them. But I think either way, there's a very exciting opportunity to install what would be a landmark system in the state of New Hampshire, what would offset close to 100% of the town of Exeter's electricity demand at the 1.77 megawatt scale, and put land that has been unused for many years to a productive use. So thanks again for having me, and happy to answer any further questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
May I just follow up on that?
Please,
'Cause
yeah.
The option I laid out in my memo, because I explored that with him, I said, what if you can, and with the town manager, what if Revision Energy is willing to finance a portion of the project, so we enter a contract of $3.62 million with what we have for a 1.77 megawatt, but then it's contingent upon receiving the credit to pay them back. I didn't know that was alive until just a minute ago. I thought but that could impact our credit ability to get the electricity investment credit. We haven't gotten into those details, so I haven't done that research, but I think the cleaner option would be, either just, I'd like to, review and negotiate a 1.3 megawatt contract, and if it's favorable, I'll come back and explain and ask for, ask for your opinion on that and maybe a vote, but would be do that, and if that goes, a warrant article would probably be the cleanest, because then it would just, and they've informed me that the design and permitting process is such that they're not going to procure any materials. The lead time is so far out that if we do decide to ask the voters for the additional system, and then if they don't approve it, then we're still under contract for the 1.3, and that gets built. If they do approve it, there's time at that point in mid-March to upgrade it to the 1.77 megawatt system. So unless we can talk more about, I can talk more about that offline, but I was thinking that was the best option.
So I understand correctly, Dave, regardless of which one the town goes with, whether it's the 1.3, 1.7, between now and March, nothing's really going to change whether it's 1.3 or 1.7. You're going to start the initiative or continue the initiative. If you put the warrant article on and it passes, then you can renegotiate to the 1.7.
Correct.
But even if that wasn't on the table, the 1.3 is still going to move on as it would.
Yes, assuming the next few weeks, assuming I get a favorable response from the select board tonight, and if that's okay, then I will go to review and negotiation, and then if I can get to a place where I feel the town's in a good position and this is a good project that I would recommend that the select board and the town manager sign on and construct, then I will be back and go ahead with that 1.3 megawatt system. Yeah, and then if we want to have that conversation about upgrading on the warrant, we can. The reason being this October and right now is because we get 2 chances at the bond bank every year, January and July, I think, and then we have to know by mid-October, I think you told me, mid-October if we're going to issue the bond. So if we don't make mid-October, now we're off again for another 6 months, and I've kind of played that and tried to hit those deadlines, but finally I'm into a point where we can actually make one of these deadlines. And
Okay.
So.
All right. Any other questions from the board?
No, I'm happy to see it starting to move forward after this much time, and the voters voted for this, so we want to keep it going. It's moving forward.
Good timing.
Yeah.
Because I know I can speak for myself. I mean, I've had people ask recently what's going on. Yeah, where is it? So.
And here it is, it's back. I almost lost it a few times, but it was back.
Welcome to local government. These are quick first.
All right, so thank you. It sounds like I will go ahead and hopefully we'll be back in a couple weeks. Either way, I'll be back in a couple weeks to report by progress. So I'll move ahead with working on a contract and hopefully getting something together for you for the October meeting.
Fantastic.
All
Wonderful.
right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. Next, we have a drought update with our Director of Public Works, Jennifer Perry. Good evening, Jennifer. Nice to see you.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. It's been 2 months since I appeared before you to give you a water resource update, and since that time, the town did, I wouldn't say the town, but our water resources did degrade into a severe drought condition, which we are still in. I am starting to receive phone calls, though, because we are finally getting some much-needed rainfall, whether or not we're ready to remove the level 4 outdoor water use restrictions, which the board did enact back on July 25th. And as you'll see in the report that was in your packet tonight, I'm not quite ready to make that recommendation, primarily because even though river flow, the Exeter River flow is back to normal for this time of year, it has only just reached there in the last week with all of the rains that we've been receiving. And groundwater continues to be extremely low, actually record-setting low in several long-term wells that are monitored in this region. Some are only below average, but there are enough that are extremely low that we need to give it enough time to make sure that the weather pattern has changed and we're actually recovering our groundwaters. Right now, we're still in a 5-inch rainfall deficit, and I even updated that since I provided this report. It was written back on Thursday, a day it was raining very heavy, but we're still in a 5-inch rainfall deficit for the year. And the 3-month outlook for precipitation is equal chance of being average, below, or above. But the temperature outlook is continuing to be high. So I think it's best if we continue on the level 4, at least for the time being, especially if we're still in a severe drought. It is possible that DES will take us out of a severe drought in the next week or two, but they are also urging caution because of the groundwater conditions, and where we do rely on almost 30 to 40% of our water supply from groundwater, it's important that we continue to conserve.
Okay. Jennifer, can you explain once again, I know you've done this periodically, but can you explain in the wintertime the snow and how that all works into this?
Yeah. So the best time for recharge of groundwater supply, obviously, is when the ground is not frozen. Once it becomes frozen, there's a tendency for any precipitation to either directly discharge to surface waters and then get out to Great Bay, or freeze. And in the winter, snow, the snowpack accumulates if you don't have any thawing days. And it isn't until the spring that you again start to see a recharge of groundwater. So this is a very critical time right now. If we continue to receive great precipitation every week for the next 6 weeks, we could quickly come out of this. Okay. But once we hit winter and freezing conditions, whatever status we're in, we usually recommend that we continue until the spring to see how the general precipitation events are occurring.
Okay, thank you.
But that's not as critical a time for most consumers. They're not concerned about irrigating lawns and things like that.
Right, okay. Mr. Dean, we don't need a motion this evening. Our motion didn't have a end date.
No.
Correct, so, okay. So we'll look forward to you coming back hopefully soon.
Hopefully soon. I will wait until I think there's enough of a change to warrant a recommendation.
Okay.
Again, we proceed very cautiously. It's been a challenging season for the water supply team, and we just need to know that we've got ample supply before we make that recommendation.
Great. Thank you very much.
Yes,
Thanks.
thank you.
Good to see you. Okay, and our final discussion item, we've all been waiting. It's that time of year again.
It is.
Bring it up.
The budget season.
Yes.
A Budget Recommendations Committee will be receiving your draft budget on Wednesday. I know they've already started doing some of their work ahead of time, but we always look forward to that. So I will turn it over to you, Mr. Dean.
Yeah.
Before you start,
Sure.
can we just, Nico, maybe you love budget and you're so good at it, maybe explain to our audience how important the budget is to our communities. Well, a little deviation, sorry.
So no, that's, and I'll be brief, but the Budget Recommendations Committee is a slate of volunteers that gather annually to review and vet the draft budget that Mr. Dean, the town manager, puts together after receiving budget recommendations from all the department heads. It also includes warrant articles that would go on for big ticket purchases or big ticket expenditures, The budget process essentially starts in September. The Budget Recommendations Committee splits into subcommittees. They're each assigned a different department, for instance, Public Works, Police and Fire, Water and Sewer, General Government, Parks and Rec, Library, etc. And from the middle to September, about to the end of November, they're very active. Each department gets its own public meeting. The Budget Recommendations Committee basically goes through every line of the budget. And they vet every line. They vet what was spent the previous year. They look at what's being recommended for the next year, all with a master plan of trying to keep a budget increase under 3% if possible, and also taking into consideration the warrant articles and the millions of dollars that those could add up as well. Upon finalizing their work at the end of November, the Budget Recommendations Committee comes before the Select Board with their recommendations. That's usually in early to mid-December, and then from there, the Select Board takes a look at the budget, and we do the same thing. We take the recommendations of the Budget Recommendations Committee, and then we do our own vetting. And ultimately, that leads up to the public budget hearing, which is the third Tuesday of every January. And that's a public hearing held in this room where the Select Board goes through not only the budget, but all of the warrant articles that are going to go on the ballot in March. The first Saturday of February, the deliberative session, it's the first part of town meeting. Deliberative session is held at the Exeter High School. And the Select Board is there along with the town moderator and ideally an auditorium full of voters. And the town moderator goes through all of the warrant articles, including the budget, and the public has an opportunity to get up to speak to or against articles, to ask questions about articles, or possibly to make an amendment to a particular warrant article and change it. And that's the opportunity by which the public has a big play in this process. Once the warrant articles are finalized at deliberative session, the second Tuesday in March, the town holds their election, and that's when the voters vote on the final warrant articles. But back to what Selectwoman Belanger was saying, the budget, the actual budget, includes general government, police, fire, public works, parks and rec, library. It also includes water and sewer. And this here is the preliminary budget that's put together by Mr. Dean. Also in this booklet here.
Love you just passed hers around.
If you want to know how your town operates, this is a great start. If you want to get involved in town government, I urge you to volunteer for the Budget Recommendations Committee. If you want to learn how any part of this town works, it's all here in the budget. I got my start in town government volunteering for the Budget Recommendations Committee, and I was fortunate to chair it for 2 years before running for Select Board. And I learned almost everything I know about how this town operates with my multiple years in the Budget Recommendations Committee. So all committees are important. You know, this one really only actively works for 3 or 4 months, but the work that they do, right, really takes into effect the whole rest of the next 12 months. It's an incredibly important committee, and the volunteers that work on the Budget Recommendations Committee do a great service to their town.
Can I just add that this process, you decide what your bills are going to be and how you're going to pay for them. Pretty simple, but that's really important. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Dean, we're ready when you are.
Okay, thank you. So our starting point for the 2023 budget is $21,404,372. And that's a 3.65% increase over the adjusted budget from 2022 of $20,650,723. I will tell you that basically our budget this year is impacted by inflation. We're seeing that in all of our departments. It's real and it's here. We also have 3 collective bargaining agreements that are taking place, the full year funding of those agreements, and that is Public Works, Police, and Fire. So those agreements are part of this year's budget, and so forth. So this is the starting point of our budget for FY23.
And Mr. Dean, the collective bargaining agreements are negotiated between the unions and the town, and they're
Correct.
put on the warrant in March for the voters to vote. So the collective bargaining agreements don't go into effect until the voters vote to approve them. And again, it's public safety, police, fire, as well as public works. Each of them are multi-year, each of them are separate, and I believe each of them are staggered a number of years, correct?
Correct. So we have those to fund in the coming year, and I could go through each department, but I know, Mr. Chairman, you mentioned tonight that the Budget Recommendations Committee is going to get this budget, and I would ask you, what would you like to hear out of this budget?
I'd open it up to the board also to mention what the highlights they'd like you to hit, but I think if you could just go over overall general government, public safety, just the 80,000-foot view.
Okay.
And maybe explain in a little more detail the increased percentage of the budget. I know you mentioned inflation and wages, et cetera.
Okay.
And any other thing that may be factoring in. And members of the board, please speak up if there's something that...
Okay. So the select board budget is up by $332 or 1.6% over FY22. So it's a small increase. As you all know, each board member is compensated $3,000 per year, and the chair is compensated $4,000 per year. And then in FY23, budget changes include a reduction in the life insurance line item to reflect members enrolled. In addition, the special expense line item has been increased by $500 to $3,500. Then the town manager budget, FY23 request is $263,743, an increase of $3,767 or 1.45%. That is the town manager. Human resources, FY23 budget request, $180,343, increase of $22,507 or 14.26% over FY22. That's one of the budgets this year where we have an additional personnel position requested, a part-time human resources assistant to support that office. So the net increase to part-time salaries and benefits is $7,777. Then we have in general government transportation.
Do you want to just maybe, Mr. Dean, just hit the ones with the high percentage increase rather than go through?
Yeah, we can do that.
Great. Thank you. Like tax collection, maybe?
Yeah,
Tax collection, sure. So that increase is include an increase in $35 for conference room meals, an increase in $1,500 in postage, and a reduction of $300 in tax billing services.
Okay.
Yeah, that's good.
So the police department is an increase of 4.39%. That will reflect the full-time funding of 29 full-time personnel. If you remember, we went to a second lieutenant in that department, and so the second lieutenant, this is the first full year funding of that position, and then the new collective bargaining agreement with the police.
I think the next, the large increase I see, Mr. Dean, is under parks. 11, almost 12%, or 12% under, it's a decrease.
Right, that's down.
Wow.
How is that?
Benefits,
Okay,
primarily benefits.
all right. Speaking of benefits, that one jumps out at me, benefits and taxes.
So the reason that that's up as much as it is because we budget the health insurance program in that budget, and when we get our actual rating, we then take that those dollars and we reallocate them amongst the departments.
Okay,
So that's why that is what it is.
okay. And did you want to speak briefly to the bond articles?
Sure. So the bond articles we have, there are three. The new police station with the fire substation, that's obviously the big ticket item in this budget season. Then we have West Side Drive reconstruction. That's a project that has been underway for several years, and we're getting to the construction phase of that, which is a good thing. The project's split amongst the general fund, water fund, and sewer fund. And then the intersection and improvements program. So this would include the roundabout that has been proposed for Pine, Front, and Linden Street, and also the Railroad Avenue, Winter Street solution, if you call it. Basically, the most cost-effective solving of those issues.
Okay.
So that's what that is. So there are three bond articles to consider.
Okay.
Warrant articles for non-fund balance, Linden Street Bridge. In the CIP, there's a proposal for repairs to the Linden Street Bridge, and we are expecting bridge aid from the state over $300,000, and the $295,000 is the balance of that. And I know Jennifer was here, but I don't think she's here anymore. But that was the proposal to fix that problem that we have.
Just to be clear, the Linden Street Bridge we're talking about is the one past all the manufactured housing parks?
Yes.
Yeah, because I don't want people to get confused since we just redid the Linden Street one.
Right, there are two bridges, yes. Yeah. Warrant articles from fund balance, the downtown traffic parking and pedestrian flow analysis, the conservation fund appropriation, the public works facility planning, the parks improvement fund, $100,000, the capital reserve fund for ADA improvements, $25,000, the fire inspector vehicle replacement, $49,313, and then the public works highway department replacing a half-ton truck with the half-ton all-wheel drive with the plow package, $53,500. So the total of those adds up to $377,871. And then you have a number of deferrals that are there and lease purchases, one lease purchase for the highway department to replace one of their older sidewalk tractors.
So the park improvement fund, that's the annual fund we started several years ago for the $100,000, correct?
Right.
Okay. And yeah, I mean, I think the deferrals that you have here make sense for this year. We have a lot of wants and needs, but given the public safety building, I commend you and staff for deferring some of these larger ticket items.
Yeah, and part of the deferral process is looking at where we are with different projects and how far along we've come with the different projects and whether or not there needs to be more work done on those projects versus are we ready to go to that next step?
Yep.
So,
okay.
And you'll notice that the recommendation, the $377,871, you'll note that is the recommendation there is to fund those through fund balance. So I'm sure we'll have that conversation again, but the town just got its audited financials back last week, and our fund balance is $7 million, a little bit above that. So it gives us some flexibility to be able to fund things out of fund balance.
Okay. And I know projected revenue for FY22 is down from last year.
Yes, it is.
Okay. And I'm trying to look at what jumps out at me.
Our revenue streams are pretty consistent.
Yeah.
So in terms of, whether or not things are declining, I don't think we're in that kind of a situation right now.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, everything seems fairly consistent. Did you want to give it just a quick overview of water and sewer without getting into the weeds?
Can I ask
Oh, yeah, of course, please.
Should we have a line in there about the ARPA funding in the revenues, just because they're one-time only kind of things that can reflect why the total revenue is now smaller? It's just a thought.
Yeah, I think that's one of the questions is how you show that, because it's a one-time revenue. And so we treat it as a one-time revenue.
Okay. That's fine.
Or maybe
Obviously, if we show it
maybe a footnote.
in any given year, and then it goes away,
Right.
our revenues decrease by $700,000.
Right.
Right.
But
So-
was it you that said a footnote?
Maybe
No,
just a footnote,
I think
yeah.
it's a good idea to at least have a page of the funds and where we've spent them. So
Okay.
we have it.
It doesn't have to be part of this, but something for us to see, the
Yeah.
public to see, that this is what we received in ARPA funds, this is what we spent for what and how much.
Yeah, and I think part of that conversation is how we look at the budget for
Yep.
FY23 and what kinds of things we want to spend perhaps on ARPA in the overall budget mix. That has definitely been something we've talked about internally. And as we go through the process, if there are things that the board sees that are, you feel are ARPA worthy, those are those are words that we've been talking about the last few meetings. If that's the case, then certainly we can do that. We have alternate funding sources for several of these items that we might be able to talk about as the budget process goes on.
Okay.
And we do have a list started that we were waiting to
Yep.
hear more about. So, yeah.
October 11th is going to be a busy night.
It is.
Any other questions on general government before we jump into water and sewer briefly? Okay, Mr. Dean?
Sure. So the water fund is up 9.06%. The major increases for that budget are the water treatment. If you look at water treatment, it's essentially, there are things happening with the water operations budget. Chemicals are one thing that they're tripling in price, and then electricity. And so some of those core issues like natural gas and that sort of thing are influencing that budget, as well as the sewer fund. So the sewer fund is only up 0.66%. Again, those are things that are mostly fixed costs. Chemicals, again, electricity, natural gas. Those are the things that are really coming along and influencing the budget in that regard. And I know the water budget, going back to the water budget, there's a first-year payment on the $1 million debt issue for groundwater exploration. And then there's a first-year payment on the West Side Drive design and engineering bond that we issued. On sewer, mainly we're looking at, there's a reduction in debt service on that fund, which is good. We're talking about the sewer treatment is the big issue there with the wastewater treatment facility, where expenses are up $203,068. And the increases there are building maintenance, which is up $50,000, The outfall dredging, which is something we do every other year, is up $4,999. The industrial pretreatment is up $3,000. The skate is up $2,000. The lab testing, which is something we're seeing on both the water and sewer side, $15,000. Then chemicals are up $60,000, as I mentioned earlier, due to price increases. Solids handling $30,000. Natural gas $10,000 and electricity $30,000. And also fuel is up $1,800. So a lot of what we're seeing are these fixed cost increases are coming home to roost in the budget.
Okay. So I would invite, members of the select board, Wednesday night, Mr. Dean will be going through all of this with the Budget Recommendations Committee. I know this wasn't available to us until late yesterday or for some today, so maybe we can go through these and show up Wednesday night, and certainly if anybody has questions after going through the book, Mr. Dean, we can make a little bit of time on the 11th for follow-up questions, just because I know a lot of us haven't had time to really dig in. Selectwoman Belanger.
Could I just add one more thing for our guests? I love budget, sorry. So, if you want to follow the budget process, you can follow it because it's recorded here, okay? So you can watch it on Exeter TV. You can go to our website, and Exeter TV has the link. You can watch it on YouTube. Sometimes they Facebook Live. It's a fascinating subject. And we also have a CIP, which is a plan, 5-year plan going out. So that's something else you want to take a look at. And these documents are available on our website. So be involved, be informed. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Dean? All right, Russ, that was a good warm-up for Wednesday.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Jumping into regular business, this is typically when we go through tax abatements, credits, exemptions, permits, and approvals. We typically meet every other Monday, but because of the calendar and some holidays, we're meeting back-to-back Mondays. So this particular night, we don't have much regular business. We don't have any abatements, credits, or exemptions, permits, or approvals. Mr. Dean, I know you were away at the ICMA conference, but do you have a quick town manager's report for us?
I don't, other than I was in Columbus this past week and enjoyed myself tremendously, so thank you.
We'll look forward to hearing what some of your other town managers, I'm sure you had conversations with.
Yes.
I'm sure we're all feeling some of the same struggles and challenges, so whatever you can bring from that conference back, I know we'd like to.
We were talking a lot about public safety facilities, so I got some very good information from my colleagues.
Good. Tight labor market.
Yes.
Inflation.
We're all suffering from the same issues.
Boards and committees.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, speaking of boards and committees, our own Bob Glowacki at Exeter TV has put together videos of all committee and board chairs to sort of advertise open spots on committees in trying to get the public interested in volunteering. I know it was on Facebook, it debuted on Facebook Live this afternoon.
I'll go for it.
So I did one on behalf of the select board, and I think he's running them every other day. He's going to put a new one on. So check out Exeter TV on Facebook, and you'll get to see our chairs of boards and committees promote volunteerism and civic engagement. So and Bob did a great job on those, by the way. Look really good.
Can't wait to see it.
Again, short week, but select board committee reports. Selectwoman Belanger.
Okay, so I had a planning board meeting last Thursday. Sorry, there we go. We only had one application before us, and it was a 57.23 acre parcel, 33 Hampton Falls Road, and it was literally just subdividing out 2 acres for a family member. Exeter Rose Farm was looking for an extension for another year. They're just finalizing some approvals from the state, and it's just taking a little time. And there's going to be a master plan meeting along with the Rockingham Planning Commission here on Thursday morning at 8:15 in this room. I Molly, you're going to talk about the communications committee, right? And the agenda items that, or do you want me to?
I mean, we can.
I just wanted to let the board know that because we talked about it at 2 meetings.
Yeah, we didn't have a communications
Yeah.
advisory committee, so we put the stuff that we had talked about on the next agenda.
Yeah. And the other thing I wanted to bring up is because of how holidays have been running and voting has been running, we are all here, and I'm going to miss the next 4 Conservation Commission, and I've missed like 3 before. Sorry, she's yelling at me about my mic. So it's just I don't like missing them. It's not like any one of us can fill in for the other on those things. So.
The it's the planning board that has an alternate select board person. I may be able to.
Well, we're all here. You'd be tied up with me. It's because of voting and moving our days.
It's been an unfortunate.
It has. I just wanted everyone to understand that, I don't take that lightly, and I just don't like missing them. But unfortunately, with the scheduling conflicts.
Thank you. Selectwoman Gilman?
I had an energy committee, which Dave gave you a report on, so I don't have to go through that, thank goodness. And also the electric vehicle day on Sunday went very well. It was very, very well attended, and it was good weather. I think the last time it was raining, and the time before that it was hot, so it was perfect. The Heritage Commission met in just a work session. We've talked about different projects that we want to do, but haven't been able to move forward with them just because. So we had a work session. We've been talking about demolition reviews and how everybody's got pictures, but we don't know if the planning department has the pictures or where they are. But we also don't have pictures of what was replaced or what replaced what came down. So we want a little bit of history like that to show that we can put in the file when somebody's doing research on their home that there used to be something else there. So that was pretty much it. We started a database and divided up properties and going forward, and that was it.
Great, thank you. Selectwoman Cowan?
I don't have anything to report.
Okay. Selectwoman Roundtree-Olaf?
Thankfully, you're able to report my report.
I did attend the Swayze Park trustee meeting last Wednesday. They went over, we had a continued conversation about signage for no dogs. They had given me a homework assignment to talk to the police department, which I did, essentially talking about, patrolling Swayze Park, which the police do, and, how they would enforce, or whether they would enforce the no dogs allowed. They also are going to do, their next meeting in October will be a site walk. And then in November, they will open the bids for the work that's done by outside vendors that do the work. And we also had public comment at that meeting from a gentleman who wanted an update on the Swayze Park roadway closing per the warrant article in March. So I was able to give an update on that and kind of walk through what's happened since March. And hopefully, Mr. Dean, in October 11th, at our next meeting, you'll have another update after. I know Attorney Mitchell has a meeting tomorrow.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So that was that. There's no correspondence. Reviewing our board calendar, again, we'll meet on Tuesday, the 11th, because of the holiday, and then back Monday, the 24th of October. And there's no non-public this evening. So again, I would like to thank Mr. Jordan, you for bringing your class. We've enjoyed having you. Please come back. These seats are often empty. We've enjoyed having a full house. And, for those who are interested in government or those that are interested, if you go on the town website, all of our email addresses are there. Please reach out to us. We'd love to sit down if you're interested and have a cup of coffee with you and talk about government and certainly answer your questions. So feel free to reach out to us. That's why we're here.
And I have one.
Please.
No, Lovey was up.
I was just going to throw out 2 things. A, do you want a class picture here before you go? and B, for those of you who vote in the town of Exeter, if you're interested in volunteering on election day, feel free to contact us. If you'd like to just be part of the process for an hour or 2 hours so that you can see what it's like to check in voters, to be present in the space where it actually happens, because it can be very interesting. We all have very interesting tales of things that were really great moments of political history and other moments, especially with the presidential sort of election that we, it's going to be very interesting. So if
worried about disruption?
Oh, I mean, worried is a word that I may not use. Anticipating just the unknown. So things happen, and if ever you're interested in what happened a couple of years ago, I'd certainly be willing to tell this story. Not here, but would definitely tell you guys sort of what happened, because it's just part of the process, and you just have to be ready for, people who are very excited and also people who are very frustrated because they think the process is not what they expect. So it's always great to have volunteers who are there to kind of see what actually happens and to see that we're not trying to trick anyone or do anything that's illegal. So it's a great way to see real life politics in action.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was going to make a plug. Our Energy Committee in the past has had a student liaison, student volunteered from the high school, Exeter High, to come to our meetings and either give us ideas of what they're looking for the town to do or the schools to do, and help us by putting our news in their high school newspaper. So that person had to leave, move to Vermont, and so I'm looking for a couple of people to take their place. If you want to just contact me, and we can figure it out at the next meeting. So I'm looking for two, so one person is Ms. Rantriola recommended, so that one person isn't committed to every meeting for your schedule. So,
as you can all tell, our town runs on volunteerism, and we're always plugging for volunteers to come along.
Absolutely. Mr. Dean?
Yeah, I also wanted to say thank you for coming in and seeing a government in action. This is one of those things where you can see that government happens out in the open. And this is one of the true great things about our government, is that you're all welcome here and welcome to participate and be part of the process. So thank you for coming in tonight. It's great to see everybody.
Pay attention.
Yes.
Intent. Listen.
All great points. Thank you again. So I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you.
Do you
Good night,
guys
everybody.
want this for your backdrop?
So why don't you guys stand this way and then.
Thank you for tuning in to Exeter TV. Exeter TV is the town's public and government access channels, available on Comcast channels 98 and 22. Channel 98 is your channel. If you have an idea for a program, want to host your own talk show, or submit a film, we're here to get your content on television. On Channel 22, we bring you live and replay coverage of government meetings and other town updates. A third channel, Blue Hawk Media, is operated by SAU 16 and can be found on Channel 13, with all your school sports, events, and meetings. You can watch Exeter TV online at exeternh.tv, Apple TV, and on Roku. Find us on social media for extra content. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell to get notified about live streams and new content. Tune in to our platforms every other Friday to watch the Exeter Biweekly Report, with recaps of recent events, updates from town departments, and messages from nonprofits in your area. If you head to our website, exeternh.tv, we invite you to sign up to our newsletter to receive monthly updates about new content, upcoming meetings, and more. We'd like to thank you for taking the time to watch Exeter TV and hope that you tune in to our other content as well.